Two.
Hello, good morning. Oh, wait, evening. Good evening.
Good evening. This isn't your other show that you do in the mornings.
Good evening. Good morning. Good night. How is everyone?
How is everybody? Everybody get on in here and start talking to us. It's a dumpster fire. We traded epicenters of the coronavirus.
Oh,
it's
so now it's Coral Gables, or what? Where is it now?
Somewhere, wherever that parade of racist white people was. That's the. I'm kidding.
Oh, we
Did you see
traded
that?
parades.
Did you see that video of those white people on their golf carts, like with shouting white pride?
No,
It's a good one to miss. It really is. It's a good one to miss.
Yeah, I'm glad I did.
But yeah, Florida's a shitstorm, which is sad because it's beautiful here and there's really, really wonderful people here. I don't want it to be a shitstorm. I like living here.
Well, I mean, the Huffington Post still has its news from Florida section, right?
Yeah, well, that is I think we're one of the only states that has those open like crime reporting laws or whatever.
No, I think this is more like News of the Weird combined with the blotter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like 3 heroin addicts were arrested today after fucking a crocodile.
Alligators. We don't have crocodiles.
No, alligators.
Different reptile. Because that matters.
They weren't, and like they weren't arrested for cruelty to animals. They were arrested for like some other obscure.
Yes.
I swear we were going to eat it, officer. We fuck it and then we eat
it. Hey, I'm from a very country place in California. And there's no shame in that game. Roadkills, there's no shame in that.
No.
Just gonna shake your head.
I've watched those YouTube videos. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but yeah, I've watched those YouTube videos.
Zombie apocalypse, you don't know what you're willing to eat. Let's be real.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried a lot of things, so my bar is probably low enough I could get away with it.
I mean, why not? Yeah. Why not?
As long as it's got meat on the bones.
That's what I say. Like
rodents, small children.
I mean, alligators do get small children. Well, they get grown-ass adults, too. They do that. They grab things and do a death roll, and then they drown you, and then they save you for later and eat you later. That's how alligators do it.
Sounds like my last relationship. Roll over and save me for later.
Watch it now.
Let me out. Let me out of here.
I'm still posting to Facebook. I am slow tonight.
It's all right. So I've been brewing kombucha.
How is that going?
It's good. My first batch was great. I went through it in like 3 days.
Oh, really? Did you do a flavor or?
Yeah. I did orange and ginger with beet.
Ooh, I love beets.
Yeah.
I love them.
It gave it a really
pickled beets. I'm one of those weirdos. I love the
pickled beets are good.
I love that. Fermented foods, yeah.
Very good. You have to. Very good for you. But yeah, it was not as scary as I think I've thought it was. I've liked the anaerobic ferments more than the cheesecloth over the top thing.
Oh, yes.
Getting used to it.
Were you worried about it going boom? Or what were you worried about?
No. I mean, I'm more worried about what's going to get into it.
Oh, yeah, fair.
Because we have fruit fly problems in New York. And that can get to be a lot. And, mold and stuff like that. the house I was in for the last 2 years had a lot of mold issues.
Really?
I had ferments go really bad fast there. I know what ferments going bad looks like now, thanks to that house. That house was just diseased.
Oh,
I'm glad I'm not there anymore, but
no kidding.
That's what happens when you build half the house with rocks. You don't fill in the cracks between the rocks. And the house was built in 1970.
Yes.
And when you don't clean out those cracks, things grow in those cracks, especially when there's moisture. Things like mold. So I think the whole house was mold infested. I tried to make like pickled watermelon rinds once. And they turned brown in like 2 days. It was just like
pickled watermelon rinds. That would be a new one on me.
Yeah, they're supposed to be really good.
I haven't had those. I love pickled radishes.
Yeah. I mean, radishes are great. Daikons are excellent. I've done, daikon is really good. I need to make it.
So you sent me that video. You sent me the video of making the bacon out of the daikon. That channel you told me about, the vegan channel. I have not. Yeah. I'm going to try to get my hands on some daikon so I can make daikon bacon.
You guys don't have daikon down there?
I think I'll probably just have to go to the Asian market to get it. Okay. I would imagine, but
you don't have it at the well. Okay, so New York City. Most of our small markets are owned by Korean grocers. So we have all sorts of
wonderful different varieties of foods.
Awesome stuff. Don't watermelon rinds make you sick? Hey, Karen. Good evening.
Hi, Karen.
If you ferment them correctly new, they're supposed to be really tasty.
I have never had... I've eaten a lot of things too, and I have never had...
It's like, now I can't remember if you keep the skin on the one side or if you cut the skin off and it's mostly just the white piece.
The white piece would make sense only because that skin on the end is pretty like tough.
Yeah, but the fermentation will break it down a bit.
I guess that's true.
I can't remember. It's been like 2 years since I tried to do it. That house was a mess for fermenting things. It was, I did sauerkraut usually takes like 5 to 7 days, depending on how thin you cut it. And that house, like 3 days later, it's exploding. It's like, okay, dokie here. Yeah.
Too many live
interesting sour. Way too many live stuff. Too many live things. But yeah. So kombucha has been good. I'm less scared now too, because I understand more about the process and about how the acidity prevents mold and such from growing. So I'm not as scared of mold taking hold.
Yes.
I'm not. I mean, I had a mold issue briefly with my sourdough starter, and I just threw out the top layer and went forward.
We've done radishes, pickles, green beans, of course, regular pickles. We've done lots of those kinds of things, but I have not made kombucha yet. It is something I'd like to make, because I like kombucha a lot.
Yeah, and it's a lot cheaper when you make it yourself. Oh my gosh.
Rather than I think $5 for a bottle.
Oh yeah. Well, I think the mother cost me $20.
Oh, that ain't bad.
I do kombucha camp. KK. It's 2 Ks, kombucha camp. She's really great. That's where I got all my kefir grains.
Oh, neat.
So she sells kefir grains. She sells both milk kefir and water kefir grains.
Cool.
And she sells kombucha scobies and June scobies.
What are those?
So June, if I remember right, it's made with honey instead of sugar.
Interesting.
It's supposed to be a lot more champagne-y.
Huh.
Yeah. I don't know. And you're supposed to also be able to make kofucho, like coffee.
What?
It's supposed to be like a kind of an acquired taste, but you make, yeah.
Just the idea of fermented coffee like that turned my stomach just thinking. I was like,
I don't know. I've had some, and I'll tell you, like my first round of kombucha after 3 days on secondary ferment was a lot more sparkly than the store-bought stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot less sugar in it. It had quite a zing to it. It was really good.
I know you went up to the cabin.
Yes.
Last weekend. How was it? How was it to be out into nature and not in the city?
So necessary. So necessary.
What are you all in? Are you all in phase 2? Is that where you're at?
Oh, we don't have phases anymore. We stopped.
Like Florida, huh?
Yeah. So technically, we were supposed to go into phase 3 a week ago. But indoor dining, obviously, recirculated air, bad. Sometimes I feel like the record is on repeat on this one. And it's like I hear stuff from when I was listening to Chinese newspapers and such. And then I see stuff in America like 2-3 months later. And it's like, come on, guys. Can we just get with the program? I mean, there was a couple in Beijing that got it on the 14th floor and their neighbor had it on the first floor. And it went up badly done. You know how there's like an exhaust vent in the bathroom? And somehow this exhaust vent went through someone's apartment 14th floors up. And that's how they got it.
Ah, Jesus.
So, AC units, it supposedly stays in AC units for quite a long time. So, no indoor dining here in New York. Probably won't be happening anytime soon, which means no theaters anytime soon, which means no anything
nothing.
anytime soon.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine. I'm just changing the way I do stuff.
Same. We just do all of our things outside. That's what we do.
And try not to get stressed out. So and going outside helps a lot with that. I started biking in the park.
Smart. Oh. Yeah. We bike. I do a lot of paddle boarding. I do a lot of that because I just have to be, I can't, I need to be outside. I can't stay.
Well, you have to get through the fear, the flight or fight response.
Speaking of,
you got to get through the fight or flight response. You've got to do the exercise. You got to do like an hour a day.
Oh yes. I get a 45-minute run in just about every day, and then weights and all of the things. But those are like, that's our boring routines, the consistency.
Hey, Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. Our boring, consistent lives are what keep us healthy most of the time. But like, I am seriously, and that's one of the reasons why I brought the topic tonight was sex and depression. Is that the depression has been super real for me. Have you dealt with depression ever?
When I'm drinking too much.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, that tosses me. That tosses me into a terrible pit. And it doesn't start right away. It just kind of builds up, and then 6 months later, I'm like, where is my light at the end of the tunnel? So otherwise, as long as I'm exercising very regularly, and I stay off the hooch, I'm good. So that's my medication, is staying off the medication.
Stay off. Well, alcohol's not good medication for depression. That's for damn sure.
It's not.
There's a reason it's called a depressant. It depresses your entire system, and that's fundamentally.
Well, you wouldn't know it if you had seen me at some of those parties back in the day. But anyways,
I mean, fair.
I never partook in the nose candy.
Really?
And as long as I had a bottle of vodka around, I was pretty good until about 5-6 in the morning.
Ugh.
Yeah. And on the really fun nights, 9.
How did you? I don't know. I would be dead.
It was interesting.
Mm.
You know, it's a different life.
Mm-hmm. What's it like when you're not drinking? Are you not around those people? Like, how does that play out for you?
Well, I did that phase a long time ago, and eventually, after partying for a year from like 5 in the evening until 5 in the morning, almost every single day of the week, I had this realization. I was like, none of these people actually are going to invest in a movie. None of them are actually going to do anything. They're all going to be doing this still in 10 years. And I stopped hitting the club 7 days a week. It took me a couple more years to tailor it off. When I turned 30, I stopped clubs completely.
Yeah.
I did my 30th birthday and I was like, that's it for me in clubs. And I had a falling out with one of the promoters that I'd been hanging out with quite a bit. He and I produced a movie together. And he made some decisions after that movie that really ticked me off because I did most of the work on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, no, that's fine. That's it.
You're like, that's enough of that.
That's enough of that. And then, I mean, but that behavior, it continues on, and New York is a drinking capital of the world. The lowest amount of alcohol people drink here would make you an alcoholic anywhere else in the world. My mom would periodically, she'd be like, Brandon, did you just, how many beers are you drinking right now? Oh, it's only my 6th beer, Mom. Brandon, have you ever considered you might be an alcoholic?
Mom was watching you.
Yeah, and these things, they run in the family. And I took a year off from drinking about 2 years ago. And then thought, oh, okay, well, it's my birthday. I'll have a glass of wine. I can control it now because I've been off of it for a year. And I think a lot of people, the first time around when they quit, they say, oh, I can totally control it now. Only 1 drink, it's fine. Oh, only 2 drinks, it's fine. Oh, only 5. Holy cow, I'm drinking at lunch on a Wednesday. And it takes off once and who knows what that is.
I mean, that biology stuff is real. That biology stuff for alcoholism, biology stuff for depression is real. You're more likely to deal with it, like myself, like depression for both sides of my family, anxiety pretty high on both sides of our family. And big surprise, when you deal with mental health stuff, you're more likely to drink. You're more likely to use other substances too. Because you're trying to distance yourself from the fucking fog of those feelings of depression, right? Like for me, like in my own skin right now, I am a story collector. I'm incredibly empathetic. I feel everything and all of the people around me.
Yeah.
And so like when the world is in pain like this is actually probably the first time, to be completely honest. This is the first time that I have felt collective pain like this around me, so concentrated.
Yeah.
And there's, I think the hard part for me, the hard part from the people I work with, my friends, my family, is that the ambiguity is getting to us. Like we don't know when this will go. We don't know, especially that those of us that are living in states that are now becoming hotspots because of dumb choices.
Well, I will interject there that we can't just blame dumb choices. There were a number of strains that were going around, and there's a good chance that these places getting the hotspots are now getting a strain that they hadn't gotten before. The science behind so much of all of this stuff is just...
It's new for COVID. It's new for COVID.
It's new. It's also new how we're handling it, because some countries are handling it very effectively with technology in a way that I don't think we could do. Have you seen anything about the app that the NHS in the UK is using?
I've only briefly seen like headlines and had to avoid some of that so I wouldn't go crazy.
Agreed. I've got a doctor I follow that's in the UK, and I watch his YouTube updates every day. And the app they have to sign into every day and say, have they been tested today? What did they test, negative or positive? Yeah. And then they periodically have extra questions in there for people to answer. Yeah. And something that they've discovered in the last week is that 21% of people were asymptomatic, except they had an unreported rash.
Huh.
So it appears as though all of these cases that were asymptomatic may have been cases that were symptomatic. It's just no one was paying attention to the rash.
They were just different. Well, that's what they're seeing. I did read some of the research around like what they're seeing in children that have that are asymptomatic.
Oh gosh, that's inflammation stuff.
Yeah, they're seeing damage to the lungs that without any symptoms. So but like these big everything feels like a big decision. We're parents, so everything that around school feels like a big decision. Everything around, like we've already decided we're going to be homeschooling this year because
you're both highly educated adults. I mean, why not homeschool?
Yeah, I can't, but I can't live with the idea of trying to help my kid through the death of a classmate, the death of a teacher.
Yeah,
like that kind of shit. It's too why, and I feel lucky enough that we can do that. Yeah. We don't have. I work from home. My husband works from home. We luckily have the luxury to do that. There are so many families.
Probably,
yeah,
is totally kosher with it.
Well, yes, there's a lot of really good like homeschooling programs here in Florida, but especially like there's so many parents out there who can't leave their kids at home. They cannot. They don't have that choice available to them. So it's a fucked up choice that we're left with, right? Like it doesn't matter in which camp. You can have lots of beliefs about all of that, but it's a crappy choice, period, regardless of what your choice has to be. It's a crappy one. So that just raises all of our fight or flight or freeze mechanisms, right? And we're bathed in that amount of hormones. So it's, of course, we're all dealing with more depression. We're all dealing with more anxiety. We're all dealing with grief. We're all dealing with all this shit. And my depression for me, like I have been in a fog. Like it's like my brain is in a fog. My body is in a fog. I can run. I can do all the things that really, really lift me up and give me joy all the time. And right now it's like, meh or deep sadness. And so what happens for depressed people is that lack of pleasure, right? Like I sent you, we talked about the article on Psychology Today that by wonderful Lori Watson, and a wonderful therapist. I'll put this article in the comments here really quick so folks can read it if they'd like to. Because credit where credit's due. Lori Watson did a great job describing each piece of like when you're thinking about specifically sex and depression and how they interact, right? And lack of pleasure across the board. So of course, if you can't find pleasure in your life because you're going through a fog or you're incredibly sad or can't get out of bed, lack of pleasure in anything that you found pleasurable before is a big part of it.
Yeah. And I mean, looking through all of these, lack of pleasure, increased emotional sensitivity, low energy, difficulty with bonding. Bonding? We're all stuck indoors. How are you supposed to find new people to bond with?
Fair.
Tinder's not working.
No.
Consider a medication change, work on depression itself. Visit a sex therapist with your partner.
Whoop, whoop. Yes, you can visit somebody like us. Sex therapists, regular therapists that are sex positive, also great. When you like working on the depression itself, maintaining consistency is a huge deal.
Yeah.
keeping your sleep schedule as regular as you can, not in the like time regular, but when you wake and when you sleep, keeping those as regular as you possibly can, because depression fucks with your circadian rhythm. It fucks with how much you want to eat, whether over or under eat, right? And so you have to, as much as you possibly can, reduce back your responsibilities and eat at regular intervals, sleep at regular intervals, and attempt to do things that you have found pleasure in before.
So on the circadian rhythm side, should people be actively making sure that their phones are turned over to a nighttime style theme, that all of their electronics are going amber instead of blue light?
Yes.
Go through your home, check your light bulbs, check the color temperature, make sure those things are set for tungsten and they're warm light instead of blue light, which is just going to keep you up all hours of the night.
Yes.
I mean, should people be looking into sundown? What is it? Sundowning, right?
Yes. Or getting, I also encourage people to get happy lights for the inside of their house, because the type of light, it makes it feel like daylight, and then you can turn them off at night. So you can have that on during the day, so you're telling your body that you're getting something like daylight, and then you can turn them off, and then that gives your body the cue. Dindy's was like my second mom forever when I was growing up. Dindy knows young. I think I met Dindy when I was 12.
My goodness.
But honestly, like, I think every person who's ever dealt with even mild depression knows, and I personally think a lot of us in America are going through a mild depression at the very least.
Well, if you're not right now, you should get prepared.
Get prepared for your depression.
Be prepared, because whether it's depression or something else, because taxes were due Wednesday. So people are going to be feeling the financial strain.
Yes.
And we are heading towards the end of yet another month when most people are out of work. And there's no relief on rent. There's no relief on property tax. There's no relief on, and they really can't necessarily relief on some of this stuff because it'll trickle into essential services. And then those people start losing. I mean, it's a cycle that I don't know that we're going to break out of it.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
How it happens and what happens.
There'll be some good reasons for living in the suburbs, that's for sure.
I mean, the hard part is the thoughts and feelings around there being no hope is a big part of depression, right? Like and the toughest shit about that just being internal when you have depression, regardless of when you have depression, whether it was now COVID or pre-COVID, is that now the entire culture across the world in many, many countries is now, it's really, really hard to find hope, right? So some of the best things that we can do is like give ourselves those moments of being able to accept, one, that this is happening, accept that this big thing is happening in the world, okay? Accept that this is a scary thing that's happening in the world. But also then be able to break your routine down to as simple a routine as you can possibly make it, that includes things that care for you and that are compassionate to you as much as possible. So one of my wonderful colleagues that I talked to today, a wonderful friend, her name's Laura. Shout out to Laura, Sage Synergy Counseling for those of you in Florida. She talked about this is like our winter. We need to prepare for having to be kind of hibernating, right? Like having to be like bears. It's time to go on the inside.
She's a really positive person. I mean, I've been looking at this like it's fall. We're heading to winter.
But essentially,
there yet.
just the idea of going inside and staying inside. And she means like that internal work, right?
Yeah.
And then preparing your insides for the spring. So that means looking at your own life in a different way, looking at like what you can do in your life in a different way.
Are we somehow more apt to deal with this in the way that we're dealing with it because we haven't faced actual terrible stuff in the world for like 75 years? Because we've got an entire generation, 2 generations worth of people, millennials and Gen Z, who haven't had to swim against the water. I mean, we haven't had a world war. We haven't had a humongous depression. We haven't had a humongous plague. I mean, this is the first time we're seeing this level of stuff in the world in about 75 years.
Yes. So it's like collective trauma.
Well, is it really because we've forgotten that we can't control everything in the world?
I think that's a big part of it. But also, I think Corona has done it's revealing a lot of the traumas that were already happening in smaller communities, not smaller as in like the number, but in just broken up communities. We're facing COVID as humanity, whereas other communities have been suffering for a really long time, like communities of color, like we're seeing the abject breaking down of our education system, right? Like we're seeing like these systematic things that were already suffering starting to fall in on themselves. And so I think COVID really is a revealer of the suffering that was already taking place, just now we can all see it. But I think there is something to like, this is now a large thing that we are collectively having to deal with. That's probably the first time in probably maybe 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, they had 2 world wars. They had already finished a world war 100 years ago. And a plague.
The plague, they didn't, well, I mean, they learned things from the plague, but like the wars were chosen, right? Those were chosen.
They were chosen for us. World War I especially was chosen for us.
Well, I've got
the propaganda
I think you get what I mean.
Around my office. I mean, that was a very
completely human made, right? Whereas COVID like was not something that any one of us had any control over at all.
No. And we're not going to.
Not anytime soon. So like one of the things like let's just put this question on the table. I will happily volunteer this information. One of my barometers for me with depression and sex is self-sex. So I'm looking at how often I masturbate. So like we know that most healthy adults, teenagers, people in puberty are masturbating. Not everybody, but most healthy average humans masturbate.
Yeah.
And masturbation is a barometer for depression in the way of like frequency. So some people masturbate more when they're dealing with depression, some people masturbate less, and it's really dependent upon like energy and their ability to find any kind of desire. So like for me, I go back and forth. I'll masturbate more or I'll masturbate less because of energy. And that's what it comes down to. Like, oh, I just cannot even muster any kind of pleasure for myself, whether it's eating, masturbation, sex, anything. But then there are times that masturbation helps with that, those doses of serotonin and dopamine. So our masturbation is a wonderful self-soothing tool, but also like it's tough. It's tough when you're depressed. It's hard to find the energy to even get out of bed sometimes.
Yeah, I think I'm on the other side of the scale. I think I go more.
You masturbate more.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's different. Everybody's
Yeah.
different. And it's not according to gender either. It is very much
Well, you
like
said it's
based on the person.
tied to soothing. Is a
It is.
person now here's some real fun psychology. If it's tied to soothing and self-soothing,
Yes.
isn't there also science behind children who were thumb suckers and their ability to self-soothe? Does that then play into if you were someone who is already in a place where they self-soothe, is that someone who is going to use masturbation more often to self-soothe?
I think that would be worthy science to absolutely research. But first, the thing I can say is that we actually we've seen in utero children touching their genitals to self-soothe, but it's not at all in the way that you think of masturbation once you're in puberty. There are nerve endings there, and they stimulate the brain. And they like that. That is all that it is for children. And you notice, like, and those of you who are parents out there, caregivers of children, you know that a kid comes out of the womb essentially touching their your job is to be able to help them. Like, hey, that's fine, but do that in your room, not in front of the everybody sitting around the dinner table.
Honey, dinner is oysters tonight, not your vulva. Do that in the... Do you need to leave the table for a moment?
It's essentially beautifully put.
Would you like to leave the table for a moment? We have guests tonight.
Guests tonight. You can go do that in your room. Feel free. But not at the table.
If you would like dessert before dessert, you can... have your
and wash your hands.
In your own room and wash your hands. Oh, the statistics behind that are terrible.
I know.
And the last time I read it, it said women were less likely to wash their hands afterwards.
I've been hearing people say that they don't wash their legs in the shower or wash their feet. They just like let the soap run down. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You wash your whole butt, whole thing. The only thing that needs water is a vulva. You can use soap on a penis, but not.
We've got the horror from hello, Teresa.
Hi, Teresa. The horror.
But yeah, how do you restart intimacy when you have a partner and you're depressed?
I think
it sounds like it's a cycle that just...
It totally is. It's totally a cycle. The first thing that you need to understand before depression, if it's before you're depressed, this is the best time to understand this. But if it's not too late, of course, if you're already in the midst of depression right now, is to understand what are your sexy contexts? What are the things that make you feel really, really turned on? And this is different than like the garden variety. Oh, like I saw somebody who's attractive and that's just kind of fleeting. I'm talking more about like, what movie makes you super, super, super aroused. What erotic novel makes you super aroused. That when your partner sends you 3 sexy pictures during a day, it makes you super aroused. So anytime that your own sexy context, those can be useful when you are depressed, because you're more likely to be able to break through the fog with the stuff that you find really, really sexy. And so I encourage people to understand what are the sexiest contexts of your life. What are the things that really excite you? What are the fantasies that really excite you? What are the smells? What are the songs? We already did the songs. Y'all go back in the lives. We did the sexy songs. Find them.
Brown, brown, chicka, 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 brown, chicka, brown, chicka, brown, brown, chicka, 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 brown, chicka, chicka,
Brown cow.
brown cow, moo.
I need that. Thank you.
But when you're dealing with depression, it is very hard to actively break the cycle yourself.
Yes.
And when someone around you is trying to help you break that cycle, it seems that people shut that down.
They can.
Depression is something that you tend to wallow in.
Turn on the inside, right? Like, and it's very hard to see past that fog. If you can allow your partner to engage in some of those sexy contexts, do that. Allow that night of erotic empathy. That your partner wants to help you feel good. Maybe allow them to do that for you. If that's something you're comfortable with. Of course, this is all about like comfort and consent, but really when it comes down to depression, it is okay to get the evening rolling, right? Like start early in the day, get that excitement up as much as you can during the day. And then when you come home, as soon as you come home, unless you're at home already, which a lot of us are, so you finish work, wait until 10 o'clock. Because we all know, like with depression, like your circadian rhythm's already screwed up. Like sometimes you're already getting tired by like 8, maybe. That's if you're sleeping, right? So making sure that you are allowing that context to really, really build as much as you can throughout the day.
I'm really into early morning exercise. That helps prevent late nights. That go do my 13 miles in the park, and
there you go.
Puts me to bed by like 9-10 o'clock at night.
Yep. Why? See, that's why we do this show at 8 Eastern, because we both are before 10 o'clock bedtimes. That is the best. Teresa needs an entire playlist of Brandon freestyling Brown Cow.
Oh dear. I was going to do a TV series. I was going to put a TV series together called Brown Chicken, Brown Cow. And similar to Seinfeld, in between the bits was going to be kind of like a freestyle brown chicken, brown chicken, brown chicken, brown cow.
Please make this. Please do this. I will watch the shit out of that.
It's just figuring out how to put a show together within a sitcom format and make it happen is a lot of brain power. Louis C.K. is a genius. I mean, he is a comedy genius and a genius for putting a show together and shooting some of it, directing it all,
right,
editing it. Actually, I think one of his comedy partners directed a couple episodes, maybe. But really, like, he did everything on that show. On Louis. He did everything. And it takes a lot of brain power to figure out, okay, how do you put this together? How do you frame it? How do you have a new take on it so it doesn't look like you're just stealing someone's idea, you know?
Yes. And especially now, you would have to be so creative about how this would work, how things were filmed, how you kept people at a distance. Or
I'm non-union. I don't have to be that creative about how I film.
Oh, I should say, this is on topic. We could riff on that forever, but like a lot of people struggle with orgasm during depression. They struggle. They talk a lot about like, really, as much as they understand how they masturbate, they can masturbate in 3 to 5 minutes and it's really quick. But during depression, it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes if they ever can bring themselves to orgasm.
Yeah.
And it has a lot to do with that fog, right? Like your body is essentially fighting off a psychological flu. That's what depression is like. That
Ew.
That's the best response.
Ew.
We had a high from Fig.
Figu. I was almost gonna say fugu. Figusu
Hi.
on YouTube. Yeah.
Hi, YouTubers.
Yeah, I mean it's you, and depression medication has sexual side effects.
A lot of them. Yes, absolutely.
You
There are
know,
a couple that are better than others.
yeah.
But then that hopefully that's the one that works for you. There are some there's some really good research around and it'll only get better over time being able to do blood testing for people to understand which medications will be a better much more likely to be a better match so that you're not having to go through such the process to
Yeah.
be able to access the medication you need.
Now here down another rabbit hole. I've been watching a lot of videos recently about nose breathing versus mouth breathing.
Mhm.
And how nose breathing versus mouth breathing actually increases NO2 levels.
Mhm.
And NO2 is nitric oxide, which is essential for getting an erection, and it must
Mhm.
be essential for a lot of sexual functions. So,
Yes,
does
'cause
some of
we
this come
break
down
out
to people needing to do breathing exercises and breathe better?
Yes, there is actually some research to suggest that there are, especially when it comes to stress hormones, that learning how to not only just be able to breathe out of your nose and mouth appropriately, but like doing breathing exercises, how we therapists teach people how to do that, essentially helps them bring their heart rates down so that they can reduce their stress response. So yes, the answer to the question to that is yes. People, roll their eyes sometimes when they think that, the breathing exercises we teach are silly, but they're not.
I mean, some of these things I've been watching, like people who mouth breathe very regularly, it changes your face.
What do you mean?
It permanently drops your face.
Mm.
You see actual face changes for people who mouth breathe versus nose breathe.
Have you ever you do a ton of yoga. So do they focus on breath work?
Oh yeah. I mean, the good ones do.
Mhm.
With Baptiste, which I was studying before everything got shut down, it was Ujjayi breathing,
Mm.
which is also used in Bikram
Mhm.
as one of the breathing exercises. That's where you breathe in through the nose, but you constrict. So it's constricting a piece near the back of the soft palate,
Mhm.
and it sounds kind of like waves coming in,
Mm.
and it's very calming.
Mhm.
It's very calming, and I think it's necessary, especially in a hot room, because it helps your body control the humidity and everything else going on. Because you can freak out. Your body can start freaking out in a 100-degree room.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Especially if you're not accustomed to that and it's like your first time in hot yoga or your first time in being in
Yeah.
that level of humidity.
Yeah. And Bikram's 110 degrees. Baptiste goes at about 90.
Mhm. Have
But,
you noticed a difference between the 2? Like how you respond?
oh, yeah. I mean, between the two different yogas, yeah.
Mhm.
I've done flow, Bikram, Baptiste. Baptiste is this kind of happy medium between Bikram and doing a flow class.
Mm.
It's a flow, but it's fairly standardized postures. The Journey into Power series is very standardized. Some of the
Mhm.
teachers riff on it. Um, I like it because it is the happy medium. You get a hot room, but it's not 30% humidity and 110 degrees. Which is, I'll take that. It's also, the flow is nice. I think it helps a lot more with your stabilizer muscles and such than Bikram, which is not a flow. You're going posture, 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 posture. There's some more advanced postures and things that Bikram will not get into unless you've taken the teacher training, which was like $15,000. Ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
But those are the only people who are allowed into the advanced classes who are teachers. And so that's where you're getting into arm balances and inversions and things. Yeah, you've got to find what works for you. I've never done Kundalini. I'm sure at some point I'll give it a shot. I've taken from some bad teachers. I've taken from some good teachers. I've taken from some good teachers who I later realized were really bad because personality drives a lot. I had a teacher who I got into some fairly advanced postures with and was doing some damage to elbows and shoulders and things. And luckily it was right around the time that I stopped going to that teacher's classes that I realized these things were just, whether my body wasn't ready for it yet or the teacher was just poorly cueing things. You know, when the teacher's yelling at you and saying after class, oh, well, that's why you have the straps. You should have used a strap. You know, it's the teacher's job to see that someone is stretching a bit and come over, hand them the strap and show them how to do it.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, the same, yoga
teachers I've ever had were super supervisory of their students. They were super involved. Bodies were super making sure that people didn't feel like they had to go above and beyond that to meet their bodies where they were, handed out straps, encouraged the use of them, and encouraged people who were advanced, like bring your block, bring your strap so that you can safely get into certain poses without doing harm to yourself.
Yeah, this teacher, we had blocks, we had straps. The teacher needed to say, you know, Brandon, use a strap on this one. There's only 6 of us in the class, for Pete's sakes, at this time. And there were a number of times where it was like, I want to learn this. I'd like to learn that. Can you help me go into this? And they're like, oh, well, sure. Pay me for a private. Well, there were people doing it in class. Why didn't, I mean, I should be ready for this. And I suspected some of it was she was artificially holding me back in some ways. And I have my own theories on the reasons for that, but all of it gets down to a teacher who's just unhealthy and should not be teaching. Very toxic. In Baptiste's more recent book, he references these yoga teachers as all granola and raw vegan in the classroom, and then nuclear as soon as they're out of the classroom, destroying everything around them. And some people are like that.
Yeah, fair. I've definitely had the good and the bad, but like the thing about breathwork yoga is that it can help you, especially during depression. It can really, really help you come back to your body and allow you to get comfortable with where your body is in spite of it being in this fog. There are the way I talk to my clients about it, the way I think about it for myself is that we are like bike wheels. We're at the center and we have so many spokes that we need to be able to get the bike wheel to turn. And when it comes to depression, you have to figure out what your spokes are to get that bike wheel to turn, even if it's slowly, and not shaming yourself for feeling this way. I have to work on that too. And inside, like being depressed right now, like I have to work on that inner monologue that's coming from depression, that questioning yourself, the questioning like whether your partner loves you, that questioning that those thoughts weren't necessarily there before depression. If you've dealt with long-term chronic depression and you don't remember a life without those voices, then definitely please go to therapy. I have been interviewing my own therapist. I've been finding a new therapist for myself so that I can get through this.
Yeah.
Because we have no other choice but to get through this. And sex can be a wonderful gift during depression if you can muster up the feelings to have it or be masturbating. It absolutely can be helpful to you and during depression. Question your doctor about sexual side effects of SSRIs. Ask for the if it's good with your body. Ask if
selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Yes, look at you.
Well, not everyone on this is going to know what an SSRI is.
Essentially, the medications that we use for depression
Yes.
are SSRIs, and they are effective-ish. And it depends on the ones that match for you and your body. And they're not always necessary for depression. Sometimes they are necessary for depression. So no shame if you need a medication. No shame at all. But also ask your doctor which one, and ask your doctor if they have access to the blood test to be able to help you choose the best medication for your biology. There are other things that you can be doing as well, like getting any kind of exercise, anything that you like and tolerate. Do it, even if it's for 15 minutes. Making sure that you're getting enough vitamin D. There is a huge correlation between vitamin D deficiency and depression. Huge.
And coronavirus.
Yes.
There are a
it's gonna be
lot of talking right now outside of America about vitamin D deficiency and getting coronavirus.
Yes, I've seen quite a bit of that. And I mean, I would imagine it'll be interesting to see how how some of these like nutrient deficiencies generally are impacting some of the underlying causes that are also causing like increased mortality for COVID. So I encourage all of you, care for yourselves, give yourself compassion. And that means sometimes being consistent about shit that we don't want to be consistent about: eating, sleeping, exercise. And it doesn't mean that those are the cures to depression. Not that at all. But when you're consistent about those things, you can keep your body on a pattern that will help it overcome depression when you're experiencing it. Eating enough, sleeping enough, or just managing to keep this as much of the same pattern as you possibly can.
And get out. If you have a car, drive 30 minutes out of town, take a hike.
Take a hike.
Go camping for the night.
Yes, get out, new scenery. Please have sex in the woods in a tent with your partner.
Rawr, bear.
Be a bear you're having sex with, not an actual bear. But like,
it's been essential for me getting out of the city.
Yeah.
My last 2 trips up to the cabin, 4 days each. It's been just essential because my brain is in a very different state by the time I get back to the city. It really is. It just cleans you out, fresh air. It's so important, but so many of my friends here in the city just do not have access to cars.
Yeah. And that totally sucks because they're completely stuck. And having grown up in a rural area, I don't know. I couldn't do that. I couldn't. I'm glad you have a car.
I kind of am. I don't know. I'm still. There are New Yorkers, and then there are New Yorkers with cars. So,
during this, they're all going to hit you up for rides, and you're going to have to.
And no artificial sugar, big part of diet and linkage to anxiety and depression. Well, I mean, sugar in general is just really nasty for you.
And just being understanding what you're putting inside your body, the average American diet is really, really shit. I mean, we could be here forever talking about food deserts and talking about how my husband and I are really, really into sustainable farming and into conservation farming. And honestly, like the more that you can cook for yourself, the more that you can create color on your plate with lots of fruits and vegetables, like the more that you can increase your gut flora, the better. You and your kombucha making, that's so great. Like that gut flora, eating fermented foods, like the research between gut health and depression and anxiety is huge.
80% of serotonin.
Yes, it's in
80% is in your gut.
So and if we're doing it with things that have been bleached and the nutrients essentially zapped out of them, like of course our guts are messed up and we're dealing with record numbers of depression and anxiety in this world.
So that gets into one of my little theories. Little theories.
Are we going to be here?
I believe in the alcoholic gut.
Okay, say more.
So I believe that if you are someone who drinks, it changes the flora in your gut. So especially beer. And you end up with a gut that craves more of that.
Well, there's actually significant research to suggest like the average American diet is what you're talking about. Like the immense amount of meat, protein, and the immense amount of not just carbohydrates that are we're talking about simple carbohydrates. And I'm not going to make enemies out of entire food groups. That's not okay.
No, it's not.
But like having if you want to do an experiment, have a farm hand-raised egg, farm hand-raised chicken, hand-raised farm, like not industrial food. You can taste the difference. As someone who've had to go, a majority of my diet is plant-based for my heart because I've had heart problems in my life. Not because I haven't taken care of myself, but because sometimes women between the ages of 30 and 40 get certain kinds of heart arrhythmias. And plant-based diets are really, really helpful for reducing the symptoms of that. And it's absolutely true.
And there's a torn vein as well that women can get over the age of like 40, 50, where the lining in the veins separates and they treat it like a heart attack. And there's some
understanding that your entire system, your system is impacted by the food that you put in your mouth. Your system is impacted by how much sleep you're getting. Your system is impacted on how much sexual activity that you're having. Like all of that matters. Every piece.
And on that note,
it's 11 o'clock.
Coronary dissection. Yes.
Thank you,
good.
Christopher. I'm glad. It's good to see you. Yes. I am already sleepy, but I also cheated and I had my sleepy time tea.
Good night.
Power down. Power down. Everybody, we appreciate you jumping on here with us. Check out the article by the wonderful therapist. It just went out of my brain. Come back, brain. There it is. Lori
J. Watson.
How depression affects sex. And please, 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 folks, take care of yourselves. Please, please, please stay safe. I'm sorry that the world sucks. I know it's not my fault, but it's still nice to have someone say that it sucks and that we're all sitting in it together.
I mean, it could be worse.
I like it, you know, man. All right, folks. We'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye-bye.